Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So, my homage to our original teacher, my great teacher, my greatest teacher, the Buddha and his Dharma, and all the awakened and awakening members of the Sangha. So, I've been reflecting on the teaching that Venerable Chodron gave yesterday at this time on humility. And she mentioned the type of non-humility where someone may be like puffed up or arrogant, where they think they're better than everybody else, their idea is more right than everybody else, and like they're the center of the universe, which of course it looks like to all of us, considering where our mind is placed with regards to this body and where our eyes are placed, and looking outwards from here, and really appears to be the center of the universe. So I was reflecting on this. She also mentioned like when two guys are standing together and both have their arms crossed across their chest and legs a little distance apart, and what that may mean, and whether that means like meeting one another as equals, both is maybe they're both putting themselves forward and meeting each other in a way on equal ground, but it's like there's this assertion of equality. It may not be what she meant, but I was thinking about that. And I was thinking also with regards to the practice of effacement, which is the translation that we have from the Pali term that might normally be also translated as the practice of humility in monastic life, or effacement as the Buddha taught it. And this one has its three aspects. So not only is there the aspect of conceit, such that one is arrogant and thinks that one's own perspective or wants or wishes or likes or dislikes predominate upon others, or have any kind of betterness or any more right as compared to anyone else. There's also the opposite side of conceit, its opposite face, which is the inferiority complex. So one side is the superiority complex, the other side is the inferiority complex. And then in the Buddhist teaching, it's not only that there are those two, but there's also the third, which is the equality complex. And all of these three are seen as continually vying with one another. It's like one tries to get on top of the other and then pushes the others down, and then the other, tries to get on top, and whichever one it is, whether it's the inferiority that really seems to be correct and to be asserted, or the superiority or the equality, and it's like they're continually vying with one another and pushing each other down, so always unstable and never giving permanent lasting satisfaction. So that in this regard it covers several of the meanings of dukkha. The meaning of instability, and with instability then there being friction and stress, never becoming settled in and of themselves, not being innately peaceful, and the element of dissatisfaction, or never giving lasting satisfaction, because they don't. If you don't think so, if you think that maybe, for example, in the United States, we might think that if equality could be absolutely asserted and maintained everywhere at every time, then we could finally be peaceful. And that may be true in ultimate sense, from an ultimate perspective. And yet in our world, do you think that that is actually going to ever happen? And we can see in current times, or even if we looked at all of human history, if we were able to do that, I wonder if we would see if equality were actually ever really settled, really established in a really true and lasting way in terms of the conditioned realms, or not. Or is there, it might seem like it is momentarily, and yet then there's always somebody else and something else coming up, and these judgments of what's better and what's worse, what's nicer, and likes and dislikes. And as long as we have those things, then that equality doesn't ever really obtain a kind of real stability. It can always be threatened, it can always be overthrown and become something else. So as a young monastic, one of the things that I learned as the basic posture of body and mind for a samana, the basic posture of body and mind for a samana, which literally means a peaceful one, a shramana, yes? All of us, whether we're samanas in training, or sikamanas, or whether we're fully ordained samanas, whether we're samanas of the heart or of the body, or both, one whose mind is inclined to peace, one whose practice is for peacefulness. I think all of us have that quality. So I learned of this basic posture of body and mind for a samana. And I'd like to share with you the way that I learned about it today, because it's very interesting. We were asked to actually sit, at that time as a young monastic, I wasn't sitting cross-legged but kneeling, and then asked to think about superiority complexes, inferiority complexes, and equality complexes. Or I'm saying complexes because that would be, like, for superiority and inferiority, that would be common Western usage in the Buddha's in the original language. I'm not sure that this would be quite called a complex, but certainly a fabrication. Definitely a sankhara, a coming together of interwoven conditions. Yes, so maybe complex is not too bad, as that's what complexes are. In fact, is they're groupings of fabricated conditions. Yes, but we normally don't talk about equality complex. So for me, as I sat then, and this was introduced to me, as these three types of conceit were introduced to me, then it was easy for me to conceptualize superiority complex, feeling superior, and inferiority complex, feeling inferior. It was a little harder for me to think of equality as a complex, but I could get feeling equal. Also, there is that, and feel what that was, even why it reminded me of this Venerable Chodron saying with hands on the chest is when I think about feeling equal in relationship with someone else, then I feel a shifting in the body, and there is a kind of an assertion happening in that, at least as I imagined it, the way that it was introduced to me. So in this exercise, you simply imagine what it is to be feeling superior. And then with your basis, with your foundation of mindfulness of the body, you see very closely and carefully what happens to the body. We practiced this. We actually then stood to practice this, and we practiced it while standing. And I could feel my posture shift. And what happened, and it seemed in my mind's eye like I even grew taller. It's very funny, and it's like the energetic field around seems to expand, and then asked to feel inferior, and there seemed to be this shrinking and this contracting in the energy along my spine, then kind of dropped down, and hard to hold my back up straight anymore, and then also noticing the emotional feelings associated with both. So what that felt like in the body, how the body responded to it. And we were asked to go to practice with this. And then also with feeling equal. Not equal as an absence of feeling, but equal as a real something. that can be asserted. Yes? And asserted in relationship, like I in relationship to other things, because that's the kind of equal that we're talking about as a complex. That is, I am equal in relationship to you or in relationship to other things. It's a fabrication, it's an assertion. It's not the kind of, where the mind is really pure and equanimous and there's not self-fabrication happening. It's not that one, not that kind. So that's important to differentiate. So we were asked then to, having really seen and felt these three types of conceit, then to let them go and see what the body felt like without them, in the absence of these three, and to sit there and see. And for me at that time, that brought up my grasping mind immediately. It's like there's this empty field and the other things aren't there, but grasping is like, yikes, I need to be grabbing onto something in order to be, holding. And I realized, this empty space here, this is very different. This is very different. The grasping normally, subtly, in one way or another, there's the grasping on to being, superior or inferior or equal, and then, clear the slate of that. And we were introduced to this clear slate then as being the basic deportment of body and of mind for the samana, for the shramana, for the samana life, the life of the peaceful one, the basic deportment of body and mind for a Buddhist monastic. And this is called effacement, which would be the Buddhist equivalent of humility. So all the kinds of, inflations or deflations get cleared. And I think this is really interesting because for me that was very different than my former idea of humility. So this was this space of emptiness which one could abide comfortably and even be both relaxed. We were asked to allow ourselves to be both relaxed and strong, firm in that very emptiness, and to explore it and see what that was like for more than 5 seconds, to allow that posture of emptiness or that posture of effacement, of non-conceit in any of these three ways to really spread and establish itself in our bodies, and then asked to try to do that tentatively in relationship with others. Can we bring that same posture of body and mind into even a single meeting, at even a single time, and trying to do that until we could do it even once for a moment, and then trying to expand upon that. And I found this so helpful, so useful over time. Not that I'm a master of it, I have the idea from my basic training, and I work with that time by time to make that my home base, the basic attitude of body and mind that I would return to again and again. If I notice, then also if you become sensitive to what the other types of conceit feel like or how they manifest, and you notice them coming up, also know how to clear the slate and see, okay, what is this? It can be hard to conceive of. It's actually not conceptual. What is this in the absence of such grasping, in the absence of such self and other concept? How do we meet? How can we meet? How do we interrelate with ourself, number one, with our environment, together with others? What is this other ground of interpersonal relationship in the space of the absence of conceit? So this was introduced to us in our very basic monastic training, and yet, for the Arahanta path, conceit is either the last thing to go or one of the last things to go. There's a group of 3 things that maybe, even non-returners may still have this, and it's so hard to see, so hard to identify. Easy to see in others, right? It's so hard to see in ourselves. And yet I found this very simple exercise that we were introduced to actually really useful for getting a sense of it in oneself, and a really wonderful opening for this alternative mode of being that is the heart and the ground of our path, embodied path, in this body, with this body, with this very mind. Yeah, and so it seems like very, very difficult and entangled, and yet also very simple and very easy if we just know what to attend to, and very simple ways to work with it and to develop it. So I was considering about this yesterday, listening to Venerable Chodron's talk, and one of our Arahant Teris, the Shtaviris, these great leading women elders, the great awakened women of the Buddha's lifetime, in her verse in the Therigatha, in relationship to Mara, when Mara comes to challenge her, she says, go talk to somebody else. And Mara so often in those verses is the voice of gender discrimination. Interestingly enough, it's not another monk, it's not the Buddha. This is personified in the early Buddhist texts. Gender discrimination is personified as Mara. Regularly, repeatedly, not just in one occasion, but quite often. So Mara comes and says, challenges her. And she says, go talk to somebody else. Go talk to somebody who is attached to superiority, inferiority, or equality. There you'll find ground. There you'll find something that you can work with, but you have no ground here, friend. And Mara, according to the story, sad and disappointed, then slinks away. I don't know if he was feeling inferior or not. My guess is caught in conceit. So she was free, no ground there, and so this is her verse of victory over Mara, and our way, our path as well.